Hi everyone. So I want you to give a really warm applause for Chrissy from Girls Who Code, who's going to be here to talk about how to bridge the gender gap in technology.
My desktop background one more time. Yeah. All right, so, whoa, I'm so loud. I have had an awesome time walking around today already and getting to peek in on what people are doing, and am very impressed by the event that HackIllinois has put together. But rather than keep talking about us and our own projects, I want to think about people that aren't here this weekend, people that aren't in the room with us for a whole variety of reasons, but mostly because they don't know computer science and they don't know that they could love it. So we'll talk mostly about who isn't here, what we're all missing out on not having them in the room, and then finally what we can do as individuals and as a HackIllinois community and like CS students in general to open the doors and widen the computer science community to everyone who has the potential to use it. But first, if you're into it, you can close your eyes. I'm going to take everyone on a trip down memory lane. Think about the moment when you decided you wanted to pursue computer science. For some people, it's like a big collection of moments, but try and hone in on like one specific thing where things clicked. All right, and I can tell you about mine. I call these light bulb moments, and I like my computer science one because it actually involves a light bulb. I was in my freshman year engineering seminar, and we breadboarded. We had like a little breadboard and hooked up an LED circuit, and then connected it to our computers and wrote a quick little program that took an MP3 file as input, and then it made the LED pulse in time with the music. And I was like, my mind was totally blown because I had just bought a speaker that did the same thing. And so the fact that I wrote something that mimicked what an Apple engineer did, or probably like an iHome or knockoff speaker company engineer did, the fact that I could create something like that was really, really powerful to me. But unfortunately, less than a year later, I had gotten really, really discouraged in my major, and I left the School of Engineering to study economics. So I am actually one of the people who computer science lost, and I'll talk a little bit more about how I came back around to the discipline and teaching myself a lot later. But I share my freshman year horror story eventually so that everyone knows that like there are thousands and thousands of other people who won't have that moment that you had, that you were just thinking about, where you were like, oh, computer science is so cool the first time I got this script to run properly. They either won't have that, or once they do have that moment, like I did, they won't have the support or the roadmap directing them where to go after that. So there are a lot of people that aren't here today who they're not here because they're not creative or not intelligent or not willing to stay up all night to complete a project at a hackathon, but they don't have the resources and the support and the access that we were all very, very lucky to have so far in our lives. So before we dive into sort of what the landscape looks like of the tech community and computer science classes in general, a quick caveat that I work for Girls Who Code, so I'll mostly be focusing on the gender gap, but there are lots of groups that are underrepresented in tech. So if you are one of those people and you feel like you don't always see your experience reflected in the tech sector or the classes that you're taking, you're important too. I just have more data on women in computer science. So we'll talk about solutions that will apply pretty broadly to lots of different underrepresented groups in tech, but these next couple of slides are very women in computer science focused. So just wanted to call that out in case anyone was like, where am I on your slides? All right, but getting down to the gender gap. Right now, in a room of 25 software engineers, only 3 are women. If you do quick multiplication, that's about 12% of working engineers are women. And maybe you've noticed this too, whether it's in your classes or at internships that you've had. At some hackathons, HackIllinois has done a really great job of getting a really diverse group of people in the room, but I've definitely been at workshops or weekend project meetup kind of things where I'm the only woman there. And maybe you're thinking to yourself as you're observing this phenomenon, like, yeah, but you know, women kind of just reached the point where they're like equally participating in the workforce and they've just sort of eclipsed the majority of enrolled undergraduate students. Maybe they just need a little bit of time to catch up because computer science is a newer discipline and a newer field of study. But that's wrong, unfortunately, because since the very beginning of computer science, people like Ada Lovelace, Grace Hopper, this is the founding engineering team at Apple, and it's about half women as well. We were women have always been at the forefront of technology and the forefront of computer science. In fact, in 1984, they were 37% of all computer science graduates, which is not 50%, but it's pretty close, especially when you compare it to the numbers today, which are about 18%. So in 30 years, we've gone from CS graduates being 37% women to 18. So what happened? Right? That's like a lot of people to lose during a 30-year span. Well, right after this statistic was collected in 1984, the personal computer was released. And it was marketed almost exclusively to men and teenage boys. So that's who bought it, and that's who used it. And when they started making funny movies about crazy things happening with computers, individual men were usually the protagonists, and then the advertisements reflected that back, and then you end up with this archetype of a programmer who's just someone, usually in a hoodie, sitting alone in a dark room. Yeah, that's Bill Gates' old headshot, in case anyone missed. That's who that is. Yeah, but that's sort of the image that we have, right? The like boy genius who's in his room alone. And that's really not how a lot of computer science works, first of all. And then when you're looking at these images, women and other groups that are not present in tech right now, we're like, oh, well, that's what a computer scientist is, and that's not me, so I shouldn't do that. Which is obviously not true, but that's sort of the perpetuating cycle that we've seen over the last 30 years, keeping people out from 1984 to now. Another unfortunate reason is, as a country, we haven't prioritized computer science education at any level, especially elementary and middle school. And studies have found that the earlier you introduce people to the ideas and foundations of computer science, the more likely they are to pursue it as a course of study, which makes sense. We do that with lots of other core competencies. But only about 1 in 5 schools teaches any type of computer science, and most of them don't allow it to count towards a graduation requirement, so it's always an elective. And most of the schools that do provide computer science are in more economically affluent areas. So it was people that are already kind of involved in the industry, again, getting that early access and support and the resources that they need from the beginning, whereas lots of folks just don't get that in their school. Additionally, a lot of the country still doesn't have reliable access to broadband internet. And I think about 20% of people in major cities still primarily access the internet through their mobile phone. So even if you have computer science education in your school, you can't go home and practice it and do all that fun, like super late night coding and debugging that I know a lot of us have gotten into. So this is sort of an American problem, and if we were in a room in like China or India or even Mexico has a really great representation of female engineers, our room compositions would look really, really different. So that's sort of the lay of the land. And once you see the big picture and step back, it's really easy to see who's not in that picture. But I think it's important to ask why that matters, right? Do we just want gender parity to say we're totally equal and representative? I don't think so. I don't think that's why we should have women involved in computer science or other minorities who haven't typically been part of the computer science community. It's not just to have them there. There are some really tangible benefits, things that they're missing out on, but also things that we're missing out on by just kind of being in a constant feedback loop. I call these the 3 C's. We have cash, class, and culture are some things that we all really stand to benefit from. I'll explain this a little bit more. So starting with cash, there is a huge economic opportunity in tech. We've estimated that in the next 5 years, there'll be 1.4 million jobs related to computing and computer science, but at the rate we're graduating computer scientists, we'll only be able to fill about 30% of them. The rest of those will either go unfilled or outsourced or who knows, maybe combined so that that 30% has to do a lot more work. So this is a pretty strangled pipeline, and it's because right now we're leaving about 50% of our population out of the job market for these types of jobs. So not only do the individuals who we would bring into computer science, they would have the individual economic opportunity to come into a pretty well-paying job at any entry level or later. We increase our domestic workforce by a lot by expanding the pool and opening our doors and graduating more and more and more and more engineers. So we can keep those jobs all at home. Class, so related to the last benefit, it's really difficult to find an industry where you can learn a specific skill to be applied in the industry and get paid really well. Lots of other vocational schools don't, and types of vocations that are similar to computer science don't pay as well right when you get into the industry, and it takes a long time to sort of build up your skills, and you have to do lots of unpaid internships, whereas tech, you really get to dive right in. So it provides some of the most robust upward mobility in terms of economic opportunity and class. And so again, not only are those individuals who are new to the tech industry going to benefit from that, their families, their communities, people that they spend their time with and their networks will get roped into the conversation and elevated even more by their newfound career path. And culture relates to that as well. So if we have more people in the room, we're going to be thinking about solving problems differently. It's been found that more representative groups that are like mixed gender and almost 50-50 reach conclusions a lot more efficiently and usually have better solutions to problems. So the problems that we are solving will solve better, and additionally, we'll have a whole new group of people to identify problems that need to be solved and can be addressed with technology. Right now, there are lots of apps, I like to joke, that basically do things that your mom used to do for you, right? You can get picked up, you can have your groceries dropped off, you can have your laundry done, you can have someone deliver you dinner. But those types of apps that are like really big in this startup boom are only solving problems for a particular set of people, the people that are designing them. We've had students in our programs who, one of them couldn't afford to pay for an SAT tutor, so she and her group made an SAT tutor like word quiz app so that they could be prepared for the vocabulary section. Another student found that she felt like people in her community didn't understand how to register to vote, so she put together a website explaining the importance of voting, the ID registration laws, and it had like a little map of all of the candidates in their local election so that people could get to the polls and participate in democracy in a way she wasn't seeing. So these were all problems that haven't been addressed already, and the more people that we get in the room, the more problems we'll be aware of and be able to find creative solutions to. All right, so I feel like up till now, it can get a little Debbie Downer-ish to talk about, the big gender gap that we're seeing and all of the opportunity that's potentially being lost. So now we're going to talk about solutions, which is my favorite part because it's what I do all day long. So thinking back about the light bulb story that I was telling you where I ended up leaving my engineering degree before I even got it, I did come back. I'm now proud to call myself a developer, though I'm definitely still learning, because a couple years ago, a friend of a friend of a friend started teaching free Python classes to women in DC, where I was living at the time. And I went to one of the first workshops, and I ran my code, everything clicked, I had another light bulb go on, but this time I had people around to encourage me, to answer my questions, to let me know it was okay that I didn't know everything all the time. And then people brought me new opportunities, like teaching for Girls Who Code, which completely changed my life. And we mirror a lot of that support that I felt that kept me down this track now in our Girls Who Code programs. So we have two main programs. One is our summer immersion program. It's a 7-week full-time introductory course for rising juniors and seniors in high school. And then we also have a clubs program that runs once a week after school for an hour or two with cumulative projects so that the club students also get a really good foundation of computer science. Our goal is always to equip and inspire and educate girls, so not only that they know the perfect syntax for everything, but that they're really excited about computer science and they're going to go study it themselves. And so far to date, we'll have worked with over 10,000 girls by the end of this year. And for perspective, usually about 10,000 women graduate with computer science degrees across the country every year. So it's a huge opportunity for us to make a really big impact. There are lots of other groups like us doing this too. So if we're working every year with the same number of graduates that are already in the pipeline, we can double the number of women that are graduating in CS. We're also seeing that our programs are having a huge positive impact. 90% of our students from our summer program want to major or minor in computer science once they're finished with it, which is really, really great. So something's working, right? And I can feel it, and hopefully all of the data is speaking for itself as well. And I'll let you in on what we think it is, because it doesn't have to be Girls Who Code, right? You don't have to emulate our exact programs, but there are a couple principles that we think really, really help create such a supporting and encouraging environment. And we call it our secret sauce, even though it's not secret, because I'm putting it on a slide and on a video for everybody to look at. But these are three really important components to all of our programs and our educational philosophy and how we try to shape the students that are in our programs. The first is sisterhood and community. A lot of these our students are girls who are interested in computer science but didn't know how to get started. They might not have it offered at their school, or they were intimidated by being the only girl in their CS class. And so by putting them in a classroom with other girls who feel the same way as they do, they have a really supportive community, and like I was saying before, other people to lean on when they feel a little bit confused and are still in the middle of a learning process. They all encourage each other and help out. So the sisterhood is a really, really big aspect. We also provide role models. We have not only our teachers and TAs and volunteer instructors are all excellent role models for our students. We have women who are working in the tech industry come into our classrooms to speak about what they're doing. So our students can start envisioning themselves where some of that representation in media and other places hasn't met them as much. They can start to see what their career might look like and how many different options there are if they study computer science. They won't feel like they're going to be stuck just drinking Red Bull all by themselves. And finally, we introduce them to tech companies and start building their network. So our summer program classrooms are all hosted at tech companies and universities. And we try to do field trips as often as we can with our clubs so that they actually get to see what it's like to work at a startup, at a big tech company, at a university that teaches computer science and does research. And so not only can they see that office space and what the environment is like, they actually get to make contacts with some of those people. So when they're searching for an internship after their first year in school, or have questions about whether they should go to X program or Y program, they have someone in the industry that they can actually reach out to. And a lot of that access and those connections can be really, really, really critical when you're trying to establish yourself as a new engineer. So This is how you can take our secret sauce and incorporate it into your lives, HackIllinois, and beyond. First, you can come teach with us this summer. I'm in charge of all of the teachers. I was a summer immersion program teacher before I started working for Girls Who Code full-time, and I can honestly say it's the best thing I've ever done. We are hiring right now, so if you have questions about that, feel free to ask me later. You can also volunteer with a club if you have summer plans already. We have over 430 clubs all over the country and are planning to open many, 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 many more over the next school year. So stay involved with the clubs. And the last one, which is not Girls Who Code specific, it's just a practice to employ in your everyday life. Become a mentor to someone in your life. If you know someone that you think would really love computer science, or one of your friends confides in you that they're like really struggling with some concept or computers or CS, encourage them to stick with it and provide the help that they need, that they ask for. Also, we talk about amplifying a lot. So you have a space in a computer science department or at HackIllinois or in this community in general. When you see, now that you understand and I've hopefully opened your eyes to a little bit of the disparity in the tech industry and discipline, if you see people missing from a room, use your spot in that room to amplify their voices and what they need and what they're already saying. You don't have to give up your seat to anybody else, but you can encourage, if everyone's sitting in a circle, you can encourage everyone in the circle to back up and make more room for other people, right? So that is mentoring and amplifying, which is something to do every single day. So yeah, come get involved with us. You can go to girlswhocode.com/teach to learn more specifically about what I do and how we could use all of you. And I think we have plenty of time for questions if anyone has any. Yeah.
What made you come back to software engineering?
So like I said, I started taking Python lessons on the weekends, and it was just, I felt that same little spark that I always had when I was programming for my engineering classes in college that I eventually stopped pursuing. And I was only doing it on the weekends and then tried to incorporate it into my job. I was thinking about going to a boot camp, but it seemed a little way out of my price range. And so someone encouraged me to look into the Girls Who Code Summer Immersion program because it's essentially a boot camp for high school girls who don't have any CS experience. So I felt that I had enough to teach it and really loved focusing on it for like 9 full weeks. And now I'm back. Yeah.
So I'm taking a class in computer science education now, and we're talking about gender disparities and other important social problems. But as part of that class, every week I tutor for a few hours. Do you have any advice for be a better tutor, especially people who underrepresented?
Yeah, awesome. So question was about advice for being a better tutor, especially for groups that are less represented in tech. I would say, that's a very good question. I would say focus a lot on leading questions, try and get them to get to the answer themselves, and encouraging them along the way. Because I found a lot of times if you ask students like, well, what would you do? Or do you want to try something different? They freeze up, and especially we've noticed a lot of girls would rather show you no code at all than show you something that gets an error when you run it. So just encouraging them that that's what this is. You get errors and the errors tell you things, and it's okay to make mistakes, because I think that's a lot of times what keeps newer computer science students a little bit nervous about everything is if you've been sort of conditioned to think that everything needs to be perfect all the time, you got to kind of unlearn that to be successful in computer science. Yeah.
The thing is that now I major in technology because I just want to start my new career to computer science.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that so many guys, they started coding at a very young age, at 8.
Yeah.
So it's really hard and a lot of things to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. So she was just saying how a lot of men start coding a lot earlier, and so if you decide to come in later, it's kind of hard to catch up. I very much felt the same way since I really started studying and exploring after I graduated from college. And the best thing that I found was other people in my age group that were also at the same point in learning, so that we could help each other. And if we attended events together, we didn't feel like we were the least experienced people there because we knew there were a couple other people on the same.
I just don't have confidence to work with them. They already know everything.
Yeah, it's hard when you feel like everyone knows everything. I would say if you can't find your own friend, like your own network, if you can find one person in like one class who you feel like is way beyond you but is totally receptive to mentoring and amplifying, if you can find one person and pull them aside and ask if like you feel like they're going to be really encouraging rather than just like, oh, you don't know that, I'm going to leave you in the dust. Those, like, having a personal ally is really, really helpful when you feel like you're starting a little bit late. Yeah.
So, have you tried collaborating with Leo Mattel or Cartoon Network or Disney perhaps to learn about other kinds of role models like cartoon?
Are you asking about the specific companies? Yeah. So the way that our summer immersion program works, which is super cool, I mentioned that it's hosted at tech companies. So that's part of their partnership agreement with us. We have 78 programs, so they're at about, I think, 70 different companies. Some of them host like multiple classrooms, but the students and the teachers are actually there full time during the summer. So we get incorporated into their sort of growth and encouragement strategy. And then our students get the benefit of seeing how Disney works every day, or Microsoft engineers like interact and plan projects. So we're very lucky to have a lot of really great partners that are invested in making this change too. Yeah.
Okay, so a problem I feel like girls have faced is that when you're actually assigned in a group, and let's say you're the only girl, and there's a bunch of guys, they always give you like the least complicated job. How do you deal with that? Like even though they know
Right.
stuff.
Right. Yeah. So the question is about if you're the only woman in a group or the only one of yourself in a group.
Exactly.
And the other group members assign you like putting together the slides or like doing the write-up for the lab rather than actually doing the data work or whatever it would be. I feel like you just have to develop like a thick skin. And sometimes it has helped me to like write down like what the actual tasks are and make sure that you divide them up evenly. You have to get really good at sticking up for yourself. But it's definitely true. And if it's a thing that you notice is happening, you could talk with the professor and like, because I don't know if groups are randomized or you pick them or like what happens, but I think if it's a pervasive thing that you notice every time you get paired up with some people, or it doesn't matter what combination you are, it always happens. I feel like that's something as an instructor and a former teacher, I would want to know that you always feel that way. So you could establish some like class norms around it too. Yeah.
How do you combat I guess a lot of times I've found that if you're, I guess, social or outgoing, then you also are assumed you cannot be smart at the same time, but you can't be both.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. So the sort of the dichotomy between like you can't be outgoing and engaging and smart at the same time. And I think it's always tough to say like that will benefit you so much later on, because if you're like, one of the hardest things that we really try to instill in our students too, they have to do a lot of different public speaking and presentation things throughout either their summer or their clubs, because if you're working as an engineer, you'll eventually have to explain what you're doing to not an engineer. And so maybe people underestimate you, and it's really hard to like get past that when you're still in school, but a lot of the time it's a huge benefit if you can actually describe what you're doing to someone who's not like a technical employee.
Well, then also if you're like like in a role that's like more like product management or something that's not necessarily hardcore programming, if you will, they assume that you can't actually do the program, and that's why you do something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I've definitely had that happen to me. Yeah, I wish that all the answers weren't like develop a more thick skin and advocate for yourself. But if you have an opportunity to actually contribute, if you feel like someone is talking down to you, like call them out on it and like let them know that you actually know what's going on. And there are often times I find like even if you're in a product management role, you can like say something, if you can like make a specific example or pick out a specific detail and actually talk through it and sort of demonstrate that knowledge, people will be like, oh, okay, we're on the same level. So if you can find like an in point, basically, try. Yeah.
Personally, I've noticed recently that computer science has gotten a lot more popular as a college major, so a lot more people are applying.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, it's getting really competitive to actually major or minor in a computer science class because just like the classes themselves being filled up so much. Is there any effort like external of the university, such as like a course online, a mini degree, other efforts that could help women in other ways than just pursuing education?
Yeah, we have a group that we've worked with called Make School, and I feel like there are a couple of places like this that are popping up that are like alternate degree programs, where instead of going to like a vocational school for cooking or like a culinary school or something like that, it's like a 2-year program, but you get a master's in computer science, but you basically just take computer science classes for 2 years. So I think there are a couple places that are trying to respond to that need and are getting accredited, but that's sort of a long process, so it's still happening. We don't work with universities specifically on their like undergraduate programs, but I think creating a community and a network of women who are coding is helping get people in the door where they necessarily might not have been. Yeah.
Back to the group question.
Mm-hmm.
We know they're at the table.
Yeah.
You're trying to divide up that sort of based on what you perceive as everybody's skill level. How do you do that fairly when some members of the group might come off as incredibly overconfident and some come off as underconfident?
I think that's a tough thing to do. I think one way to solve the group work problem when if you get randomly paired up with someone in a large lecture or something like that and you don't know all of their skill levels, one thing to do is we emphasize pair programming a lot in all of our curriculum, and I think that's a really good way to combat some of that. Like if you're doing a group project, and there are 5 group members, don't just take all the tasks and divide them in 5 and have everyone go away and come back. If you have a plan for these 2 people solve this part of the problem and then these 3 people will work on this together and then like 1 and 2 will put the slides together at the end or something like that, I think encouraging people to work together more can buffer any overestimation of skill level or people underestimating themselves. And then the group project still gets done because no one's just like sitting in the corner terrified that they don't know what to do. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, HackIllinois, for having me. I'll be around if anyone has more questions or wants to get involved with us this summer or next school year. But enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.